it's Liza Sivek. And before we begin, I want to remind you that show notes and links mentioned in this episode can be found in my Facebook and LinkedIn groups called Marketing Myths and Magic. Obviously, it's free to join, and group members get bonus freebies, live Q&As with special guests, events, and I'll be there to answer questions and chat with you. Head over to Facebook, LinkedIn, or there's a link at lizasivekmarketing.com and be a part of the conversation. Okay, let's jump in. Hi, thanks for joining us on this episode with our podcast guest, Walt Kuenstler. He is going to be talking about the book he wrote, Myth, Magic, and Marketing, here on the podcast, Marketing, Myth, and Magic. And we are going to be giving away a free copy, compliments of Walt, to one random entry at the end of the week. So please go to lizasivekmarketing.com/book giveaway, all one word, and you will be entered to win one copy of the book, or you can find it on Amazon. Thank you. Hi, magicians. Welcome back. This is Liza Sivek of Liza Sivek Marketing and Marketing Myths and Magic podcast. And I'm saying that name again because today we are talking to Walt Kuenstler, and he is the author of Myth, Magic, and Marketing. It's a book that is an irreverent history of branding from the Acropolis to the Apple Store. And I love that. And I'm going to welcome Walt, first of all. How are you, Walt? Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate being part of this podcast, and everybody out there, say hello to you also.
Right. Everybody say hi, because that's important. We can't forget all the people that are with us in spirit. Okay. We have this book in front of me, and how I found Walt was because I was on LinkedIn and I was trying to create my VIP podcast group, which if you're on LinkedIn or Facebook is Marketing Myths and Magic. And that has show notes, and it has interviews, and it has live Q&As with some of my guests. And, Walt may be doing that. We'll see. And we have a lot of fun with this name because it's Marketing Myths, no comma, but I get a lot of results on Google that say marketing, comma, myths, or marketing myths is a big podcast name, which is why I added and magic. So when I was creating the podcast group, I searched to make sure nobody else was using something very similar, obviously, so it didn't confuse people. And this video with Walt's face came up, and it said Myth, Magic, and Marketing. And I was like, well, what's this? And he had actually written this book, and he talks about the branding connections now with the gods and the myths of the past. And stay with us, because this is really interesting. And I'm a history buff, and I like American gods and Thor from Marvel, all that. So you guys all know I'm a geek. I usually talk about Star Wars, but you all know I'm a geek, and it's all up there, all that fiction, all those mythologies. And when I saw this, I thought, what a great parallel. And the first thing I thought of, as I said to Walt, was Neil Gaiman's book and TV show American Gods. And Walt, you said that was exactly what you were trying to relate to, the parallel of that we're looking to brands like we used to look to gods to fix our lives.
That's absolutely the truth. Whether or not one believes in gods and mysterious magical powers and all of those mysteries of the universe or not, a very effective way to approach branding is to pretend as if those might have something to contribute and in fact play a role in how all of this unfolds. My background is I actually got my first job in advertising when I was 18 years old in Chicago as an office boy after high school. My father was of the Mad Men era, and he was a marketer on the client side, working for companies like Warner Lambert and General Foods and such. So I grew up surrounded by branding and discussion of packaging and discussions of advertising. And some of my earliest, fondest memories is my dad would take me to the grocery store, and I didn't realize he was doing a store check. And he would walk around and look and see how the promotional material for Bird's Eye Frozen Foods was being displayed and how the Tang jars were being displayed and such. So I grew up with all of this stuff. And as I got older, I began to, be taught and learn, branding is much more than just a logo, and it's much more just than what's called brand awareness. Have you ever heard of my company?
Yeah. Right.
That the real power of a brand is all of the stuff that it conjures up inside the head of your prospect or your consumer in terms of everything they know about the brand. The extreme example is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is not just, this nice brown liquid that I enjoy drinking. If you've followed Coca-Cola advertising, over the years or even just yesterday, it's about evoking all these memories and all these good experiences and all of these wonderful things about life. And that's the wonderful hidden side of it. It's semiotics, which is symbols. The symbol is the Coke logo, and this what is signified by the symbol, and what is signified in the case of Coke is your entire life experience as it crossed the paths with Coca-Cola. So not all of us are selling national name brand soft drinks, but everything that we sell is informed in the minds of our customers and prospects by these other sorts of associations.
Right. And apparently Coca-Cola is doing well with that. They do a good job. And you mentioned Coca-Cola, and I was thinking in preparing for this podcast, two things. One, I noticed that every time I get behind a Coca-Cola truck, a delivery truck, now their brand is saying, enjoy it again and again, recycle the bottle. And then the little recycle symbol has a Coke bottle silhouette in the middle, and it says, give it back. And that's evoking all of the, I don't want to say greenwashing, because Coca-Cola probably has a real, I haven't looked into it, I'm sure they have a real, eco-conscious campaign and standpoint. A company like that can't afford not to. But that branding of, we're going to tell you that this drink that is very far from natural, very, very far, just slightly, is, still something that you can add back to the environment by giving back the glass bottles, giving back the plastic bottles. So what a great connection they had there. Plus, when you talk about branding and how well they've done it, we all of a certain age, meaning anyone over 30, remembers the people, give the world a Coke commercial where they're all passing it down, and it's a long line of people across the world. And Santa Claus, the Santa Claus imagery that we know in America is directly related to an artist who made up Santa Claus for the Coca-Cola campaign. And I don't know if it was the 40s or 50s, or you probably know, but that came from the Night Before Christmas description. So we didn't think of Santa Claus as looking like that until Coca-Cola told us to. And now you can't walk into Dollar Tree without the Santa Claus cardboard cutout decor looking just like that. Right. So that's the kind of influence that kind of emotion can have on society, because we all, whether we believe in Santa Claus or not, because of course he is real, obviously, for those in the car with their families. I want to be clear, Santa Claus is real, but we all think of him, since we don't see him, he hides, as Coca-Cola depicted him. That's what we think of in America and most other Western countries. And isn't that interesting that they can have that kind of connection? And my thought of that, because that directly relates back to the archetypal imagery we talked about. Santa Claus gives you a certain emotion. It's a feeling of giving and Christmas spirit and everything else. And that directly relates to what you're talking about in this book. So it was funny that you brought up Coca-Cola just now. So tell me a little bit about the archetypes as far as the gods. There's Thor and there's Loki. I think of them as Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston, but the real Thor and Loki in mythology. How do we connect those to branding now? Like, how did that happen? What's the leap?
One of the things that happened on my life journey was after I had been working in the profession for a couple of decades, actually. I had occasion to be introduced by a friend of mine to Jungian psychology, Carl Jung, Jung. And Jungian psychology identifies patterns in human behavior by associating them with the ancient gods. Each god had things that represented its character, such that there were gods of war, there were gods of love, there are gods of nurturing and such. And I began
It's a big one. It's a big archetype in marketing. I mean, let's just
so I began to experiment with viewing. So what's the underlying archetype behind some of these behaviors, my behavior, what we're communicating here? And as I did that, I also discovered that there are very, very strong parallels. And I want everyone to have an open mind here. I'm not advocating anything blasphemous, but there are strong parallels between the structures of religions and the structures of branding. Not the least of which is, there's a strong organizing principle, there's a set of beliefs, there's a central character, as you've been noting in these things.
And I am going to mention that in his book, it says irreverent history. So let's keep that in mind.
It's a very irreverent
about religion. Okay.
A very irreverent history, and I'll just repeat. You remind me. Remember, this is an as-if conversation. Let's pretend as if some of this may have some validity or connections to our lives. So those parallels suddenly had me rethinking what's going on with branding, and it also gave me a really good mental container to how to hold all of these brand attributes. Because in doing many branding exercises over the course of my career, you would always sit down with, if it was a new brand, with the founder of the brand, what do you want this to represent? And if it was an existing brand, you'd also have to sit down with customers and say, what does this thing represent to you, good and bad? And you end up putting people on the analytical couch to see what comes up. And so this gave me this Jungian approach gave me another framework to do that exercise. And for me, I found that it was just an excellent fit of looking at these things and saying, so what is the myth behind your brand, or what should the myth behind your brand be? And generally, as you talk and unpack this with people, it begins to make some sense. Does that make any sense to you?
Does to me, and I think it makes sense to other people. I love the term mental container because all my mental containers have sieves, and I'm going to start thinking of mental containers. And they're all leaks. So no, but I think that's important to be able to hold that idea in your mind of this is a transformational emotional journey that relates to human nature. Anyone who's studied marketing and business has probably come across Maslow's theory of hierarchy, and part of it is belonging, being part of a tribe. Part of it is, survival, protection, safety. All these things are what you get from that archetype, from that god. So if you're a Viking and you're praying to Odin, who, by the way, the Norse gods were expected to be walking around them disguised all the time. They came back and forth onto Earth like all the time. They knew that they could be bumping into Odin at any time, which is why they were always nice to everybody, because you never knew. So, you're expecting that person to give you the transformation you want in your life. I need more protection. I need more food. I need more strength to go to war. And that same emotional transformation is key in marketing and in advertising. You have to tell them, here's your pain, and here's where we're going to get you, and here's how. So yeah, relating that right back to what you just said, it's a very clear parallel. And I know you're going to help us find that squiggly line that gets there, but it's also a very clear parallel. So that's where this comes in for marketing, for those who are still